The metallic taste of blood had been Maya's first memory of fear. Not the sharp, immediate fear of a nightmare that fades with morning light, but the slow, creeping fear that settles into your bones and changes the way you breathe. She was 23 now, sitting in Dr. Chen's dental office, staring at the X-ray illuminated against the light box. The fracture line ran through her left lateral incisor like a crack in ice, but it wasn't the technical details that made her hands shake. It was the way Dr. Chen's eyebrows had drawn together, the way she'd asked, twice, about the timeline. "You said this happened when you were 8? Dr. Chen's voice carried that careful neutrality that medical professionals perfect, the tone that doesn't quite hide concern, but doesn't name it either. Maya nodded, her tongue unconsciously finding the smooth composite filling that had covered the damage for 15 years. The office smelled of mint and antiseptic, sounds muffled by thick carpet and soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. Through the window, she could see the parking lot of the strip mall. Ordinary Tuesday afternoon life continuing while her understanding of her own history cracked apart. "The angle of the fracture," Dr. Chen continued, pointing to the ghostly white lines on the film, "and the way the root has compressed over time. Maya, this kind of damage doesn't typically come from playground accidents. The force required, the specific vector of impact." She paused, choosing her words. "Has anyone ever asked you detailed questions about how this injury occurred?" The question hung in the sanitized air like smoke. Maya found herself thinking about her cousin Derek, who would be 25 now, probably still living in Uncle Tom's house on Maple Street. Derek with his too wide smile and his habit of standing just a little too close. Derek who had always been Uncle Tom's golden boy, the one who could do no wrong, even when he was doing everything wrong. "My family," Maya said slowly. "They said, kids play rough." Dr. Chen's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. She'd been practicing dentistry for 12 years, had seen the aftermath of domestic violence, child abuse, accidents both genuine and fabricated. But there was something about the precision of this particular fracture combined with the patient's obvious distress that made her stomach clench. "Maya, I need to ask you something, and I want you to know that whatever you tell me stays between us, unless you decide otherwise." She pulled up a second chair, abandoning the clinical distance of her examination stool. "When this happened, when you were 8, do you remember if anyone took photos of your injuries? Any documentation beyond the immediate dental work?" The memory surfaced like something dredged from deep water. Maya was 8 again, standing in Uncle Tom's kitchen while Aunt Linda held a bag of frozen peas against her swollen face. The kitchen had yellow wallpaper with tiny roosters, a coffee maker that gurgled constantly, and the lingering smell of bacon grease that never quite left the air. Derek was somewhere else in the house. She remembered because she could hear the Nintendo playing, that cheerful electronic music that would forever after make her feel vaguely sick. "My aunt took a Polaroid," Maya heard herself saying. "She said it was for insurance purposes, in case we needed to prove it was an accident." The accident word felt foreign in her mouth now, like a language she had once known but had forgotten how to speak. Uncle Tom had appeared in the kitchen then, filling the doorway with his bulk and his disapproval. He looked at the Polaroid in Linda's hand, at Maya's tear-streaked face, at the blood on her Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt. He'd said, "Kids play rough." And somehow, those 3 words had become the official story, repeated so many times that Maya had almost believed them herself. Dr. Chen was writing something in Maya's file, her pen moving in quick, decisive strokes. "Maya, I'm going to give you some information. There are people who specialize in reviewing old cases, particularly when new evidence comes to light. Dental records, believe it or not, are some of the most reliable forms of documentation we have." The office suddenly felt too small, too warm. Maya could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, could taste that metallic fear flavor again after all these years. "Dr. Chen, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that the injury pattern documented in your dental records tells a story that doesn't match playground roughhousing." Dr. Chen's voice was gentle, but firm. The angle of impact, the severity of the fracture, the associated soft tissue damage that would have been required.
Maya, someone hit you in the face with significant force. The words seemed to echo in the small room. Maya thought about her cousin Derek, about the way he'd towered over her even at age 10, about his fascination with breaking things. She thought about her parents, who had been going through their divorce that summer and had been grateful when Uncle Tom offered to watch Maya during the day. She thought about how Derek had seemed to know exactly what buttons to push, which games to suggest that would end with Maya hurt and crying. There was this game he liked to play, Maya found herself saying. Derek. He called it Mercy, but it wasn't like the regular Mercy game kids play with their fingers. He would... She stopped, the memory fully surfacing now, clear and sharp after years of being buried. He would hold a baseball bat, and I was supposed to try to get it away from him, but every time I got close, he would swing it, not to hit me directly, but close enough that I'd have to dodge, except that last time... Dr. Chen set down her pen. Maya, what happened that last time? The memory was complete now, no longer fragmentary or confused. Maya could see Derek's face, could remember the exact moment when his expression had shifted from playful malice to something darker. She'd been reaching for the bat, getting tired of the game, wanting it to be over. Derek had been backing up, taunting her, when he'd suddenly stopped and swung the bat directly at her face. He hit me, Maya said, and the simple truth of it felt like breathing after holding her breath for 15 years. Not accidentally, not because we were playing too rough. He swung that bat right at my face. And when I fell down, when I was crying and bleeding, he stood over me and said, "Tell them it was an accident or I'll do it again." Dr. Chen reached for the box of tissues on her counter. Maya, I want you to know that what you're telling me makes complete sense given what I'm seeing in these x-rays. The trajectory of the fracture, the way the bone splintered, the damage to the surrounding teeth. It's entirely consistent with being struck by a blunt object like a baseball bat. Maya accepted the tissues, though she wasn't sure when she'd started crying. The tears felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else. My parents were so overwhelmed with the divorce. And Uncle Tom, he was their hero, taking care of me all summer. When Derek said we'd been playing baseball and the bat slipped when he swung it, everyone just believed him. Everyone wanted to believe him. Trauma, especially childhood trauma, has a way of fragmenting memories. Sometimes our minds protect us by making the truth feel dreamlike, uncertain. But dental records don't lie, Maya. Bone tells the truth even when everything else is confused. Maya stared at the x-ray again, seeing it differently now. The fracture line wasn't just damage anymore, it was evidence. It was proof of something that had happened to an 8-year-old girl who had been failed by every adult who was supposed to protect her. What happens now? Maya asked. Dr. Chen pulled out a business card from her desk drawer. Now you get to decide what you want to do with this information. This is the number for a victim's advocate I work with. She specializes in cases where historical abuse is uncovered later in life. There's also a detective, Sarah Morrison, who handles cold cases involving minors. But Maya, I want you to understand, whatever you decide to do or not do, that's entirely your choice. Maya took the business card, running her thumb over the raised lettering, Detective Sarah Morrison, Crimes Against Children Unit. The title made something twist in her stomach, but also made her feel less alone somehow. There were people whose job it was to care about what had happened to 8-year-old Maya, even 15 years later. The Polaroid, Maya said suddenly. My Aunt Linda, she might still have it. She keeps everything. Birthday cards from 1987, school pictures, every scrap of family history.
That photograph could be crucial evidence, Dr. Chen said. Combined with your dental records, your testimony, and any other documentation from that time, Maya, you might have a stronger case than you realize. Maya stood up slowly, her legs feeling unsteady. The office looked the same as when she'd arrived, but everything had changed. The comfortable numbness she'd carried for 15 years was gone, replaced by something raw and frightening, but also oddly hopeful. For the first time in her adult life, the story of her broken tooth made sense. Dr. Chen, Maya said at the door, when you looked at those x-rays, did you know right away that it wasn't an accident? Dr. Chen nodded. I suspected immediately. But Maya, I've been doing this long enough to know that sometimes families need time to process difficult truths. I'm glad you were ready to hear it. Maya walked out into the strip mall parking lot, blinking in the afternoon sunlight. Her car, a blue Honda Civic with a crack in the windshield, sat exactly where she'd left it. But Maya felt like a different person approaching it. She sat behind the steering wheel, without starting the engine, holding Detective Morrison's business card and thinking about Derek. He worked at a construction company now. She'd heard through family gossip. Had a girlfriend, was talking about marriage. Uncle Com still bragged about him at family gatherings, still treated him like the son who could do no wrong. And Maya had spent 15 years avoiding family barbecues, making excuses not to attend weddings and graduations, carrying a fear she couldn't name and a story that had never quite made sense. She pulled out her phone and stared at Detective Morrison's number. Her finger hovered over the digits, and she could almost hear 8-year-old Maya whispering from somewhere deep inside her chest. Tell the truth. Finally tell the truth. But first, she realized, she needed to call Aunt Linda about a photograph that might hold the key to everything. Maya started her car and pulled out of the parking lot. Her broken tooth no longer just a reminder of childhood pain, but evidence of something that had been hidden too long in the shadows of family silence. The metallic taste of fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, something that tasted like hope, sharp and bright and dangerous as the truth itself. Maya drove through the familiar streets of her childhood neighborhood, past the elementary school where she'd learned to read, past the park where she'd once felt safe. Everything looked smaller now, shabby around the edges, in the way that childhood places always do when you return to them as an adult. But today, the shabbiness felt ominous rather than nostalgic. These streets held secrets, and Maya was finally ready to dig them up. Her apartment was a one-bedroom on the second floor of a converted Victorian house, painted yellow with white trim. She had chosen it specifically because it was nothing like Uncle Tom's house. No cramped kitchen with rooster wallpaper, no basement recreation room where Derek used to corner her during family visits. Her space was light and airy, with plants on every windowsill and photographs of places she'd traveled to alone. Safe places, places where no one knew her history. She set Detective Morrison's business card on her kitchen table next to a half-eaten bowl of cereal from that morning. The cereal had gone soggy, floating in milk like tiny life preservers. Maya stared at it, remembering how Derek used to flick cereal at her when the adults weren't looking, how he'd make eating breakfast into a minefield of small humiliations. Her phone rang, and Maya jumped, her heart racing before she saw her mother's name on the caller ID. "Maya, honey, I was just thinking about you. How was your dentist appointment? Nothing serious, I hope." Maya opened her mouth to say what she always said. Fine, everything is fine, just a routine cleaning. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she heard herself saying, "Mom, I need to ask you something about when I was 8, when I broke my tooth at Uncle Tom's house."
The silence on the other end of the line stretched too long. Maya could hear her mother's television in the background, some daytime talk show discussing relationship problems with manufactured outrage. "Oh, sweetie, why are you thinking about that old thing? That was so long ago." Her mother's voice had shifted into that higher register she used when she was uncomfortable. "You know how Derek was. He was just a little boy himself. Boys that age, they don't know their own strength." "Derek was 10, Mom, and he hit me with a baseball bat." Another pause. Maya could practically hear her mother's mental gears turning, searching for the familiar script they'd all used for 15 years. "Maya, you know that's not how it happened. You two were playing, and the bat slipped when he swung it. Uncle Tom saw the whole thing. It was an accident." Maya closed her eyes, feeling 8 years old again, feeling small and powerless and unbelieved. "Mom, did anyone ever ask me what happened? Did anyone ever ask me to tell my own version of the story?" "Honey, you were in shock. You were crying so hard you could barely speak. Uncle Tom had to explain what he'd witnessed because you couldn't." But Maya was remembering now, clearly and completely. She remembered trying to tell her mother what had really happened, remembered the adults exchanging meaningful looks over her head, remembered Uncle Tom's big hand on her shoulder and his voice saying, "Sometimes when kids are traumatized, they remember things wrong." "I wasn't remembering wrong," Maya said quietly. "Derek hit me on purpose. He'd been threatening to hurt me all summer, and that day he finally did it." Her mother's sigh came through the phone like static. "Maya, honey, I think maybe you should talk to someone, a professional. This fixation on Derek, it's not healthy. He's a good boy. He's always been a good boy." Maya felt something crack inside her chest. Not like a bone breaking, but like ice melting. All these years, she'd been carrying the weight of her family's willful blindness, their need to preserve Uncle Tom's reputation as the reliable brother, Derek's image as the golden child. "Mom, I'm 23 years old. I'm not a traumatized 8-year-old anymore. I'm telling you what happened to me, and you're still not listening." "Of course I'm listening, but no." Maya's voice was steady now, stronger than she had ever heard it. "You're not listening. You're reciting the story you all agreed to tell. But I was there, Mom. It happened to me. And Derek has never once apologized, never once acknowledged what he did because everyone has spent 15 years protecting him from the consequences." Maya hung up the phone before her mother could respond. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it felt different. This time it felt like power. She walked to her bedroom and opened the closet, pushing past her work clothes to reach a small cardboard box on the top shelf. Inside were the remnants of her childhood, report cards, a few stuffed animals, school photos, and buried at the bottom, a small jewelry box that played Fur Elise when you opened it. Maya lifted the velvet tray inside the jewelry box, revealing the hiding place she'd created as a child. There, wrapped in a piece of tissue paper, was a small spiral notebook with a purple cover. She'd started keeping it the summer she was 8, after Derek's behavior had escalated from garden-variety bullying to something darker. Maya opened the notebook and saw her 8-year-old handwriting, round and careful, documenting a summer of fear. June 15th. Derek pushed me down the stairs, but said it was an accident. My knee is bleeding, but Aunt Linda said I probably just tripped.
June 22. Derek put a spider in my lunch. When I screamed, he laughed, and Uncle Tom said I was being dramatic. July 4. Derek said he would hurt me worse if I told anyone about the games we play. He showed me his dad's hammer and said he knows how to use it. July 18. Derek broke my toy horse on purpose. When I cried, he said crying is for babies, and babies deserve to get hurt. Page after page of careful documentation, a child's attempt to make sense of systematic cruelty. Maya had forgotten about this notebook, forgotten that she'd been trying to build a case even then, trying to create evidence that someone would believe. The final entry was dated July 25th, 3 days before the baseball bat incident. Derek said tomorrow we're going to play a new game called Mercy. He said it will be the most fun game ever, and I will remember it for the rest of my life. I don't want to play. I want to go home. I want Mommy and Daddy to stop fighting and come get me. Derek scares me. Maya sat on her bed, holding the notebook and crying for the little girl who had tried so hard to be heard. 8-year-old Maya had been methodical, careful, desperate to document the truth before something terrible happened. And something terrible had happened. And the adults had covered it up. And 8-year-old Maya had learned that her truth was less important than family peace. She picked up her phone and called Aunt Linda's number, the one she'd memorized as a child for emergencies that never came. "Maya, what a lovely surprise." Aunt Linda's voice was warm, genuinely pleased. Unlike Uncle Tom, who had always made Maya feel like an imposition, Aunt Linda had tried to be kind within the constraints of her marriage. "How are you, sweetheart?" "I'm okay, Aunt Linda. I'm calling because I need to ask you about something that happened when I was 8, the day Derek broke my tooth." The warmth in Aunt Linda's voice cooled perceptibly. Oh, honey, why are you thinking about that old business?" Aunt Linda, do you still have that Polaroid you took? The one of my face after it happened? Silence. Maya could hear a clock ticking in the background, could imagine Aunt Linda in her kitchen with the rooster wallpaper, probably wondering how to navigate this conversation without upsetting anyone. Maya, why would you want to see something like that? It would just upset you. So you do still have it. I keep everything, you know that. But, sweetheart, dredging up old hurts, what good could it possibly do? Maya took a deep breath. Aunt Linda, I saw a new dentist today. She looked at my x-rays, and she said the damage to my tooth isn't consistent with an accident. She said someone hit me deliberately, with significant force. The silence stretched so long that Maya thought the call had dropped. Aunt Linda, are you there? I'm here. Her aunt's voice was barely a whisper. Maya, you can't be suggesting... I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what a medical professional told me based on evidence. Aunt Linda, you were there that day. You saw Derek's face right after it happened. You saw how I was acting, how scared I was. Deep down, in your heart, what do you think really happened? Maya could hear her aunt crying softly. When Linda finally spoke, her voice was broken. He was such an angry little boy. After his parents' divorce, after Tom got custody, Derek was so angry all the time. But Tom refused to see it. He said boys need to be tough, that Derek was just adjusting. And when things would happen, when Derek would hurt other children or break things or... Linda paused, fighting for composure. Tom would always have an explanation, always a reason why it wasn't Derek's fault.
Aunt Linda, what did you see that day? Really see? I saw you in the backyard crying, blood all over your shirt, and I saw Derek standing over you with that aluminum bat in his hands, and there was this look on his face. Maya, he looked proud. He looked satisfied, and when I asked him what happened, he already had his story ready, already knew exactly what to say to make it sound like an accident. Maya closed her eyes, feeling vindicated and heartbroken all at once. But when Tom came outside, Derek transformed. Suddenly, he was the concerned cousin, worried about you, sorry that his practice swing had accidentally connected. And Tom wanted to believe it so badly, needed to believe that his son wasn't the kind of child who would deliberately hurt someone smaller and weaker. The Polaroid, Aunt Linda. Can you describe what it shows? Your face was... Oh, Maya. The swelling, the blood, but also the expression in your eyes. You looked terrified, not like a child who'd been accidentally hurt, but like a child who'd been threatened. Maya, I should have protected you better. I should have asked more questions. Maya felt a strange sense of relief flooding through her. Finally, after 15 years, an adult was acknowledging what she'd experienced. Aunt Linda, would you be willing to give that photograph to the police? To tell them what you really saw that day? The police? Maya, you can't be serious. Derek is getting married next month. He has a job, a future. This would destroy everything. And there it was. The same instinct that had protected Derek for 15 years, the same prioritizing of his future over Maya's truth, his comfort over her justice. Aunt Linda, when Derek gets married, when he has children of his own, what do you think will happen to them? Do you think 15 years has magically transformed him into someone safe? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Maya could hear her aunt breathing, could almost feel her internal struggle between family loyalty and moral responsibility. I need to think, Linda whispered finally. I need to think about all of this. Okay,
But while you're thinking, remember that I was 8 years old and no one protected me. Remember that Derek has never apologized, never acknowledged what he did, never shown any remorse. And remember that silence doesn't protect anyone except the person who benefits from it. After Maya hung up, she sat in her bedroom holding the purple notebook and thinking about patterns. How Derek had systematically isolated her that summer. How he trained her to expect cruelty. How he'd escalated his behavior until the inevitable happened. How the adults had closed ranks around him immediately, creating a version of events that preserved their comfort while erasing her experience. Maya opened her laptop and began researching. She read about childhood trauma, about family systems that protect abusers, about the long-term effects of being disbelieved. She read about other cases where dental records had provided crucial evidence in historical abuse cases, about the statute of limitations in her state, about victims' advocates and criminal proceedings. As the afternoon light faded outside her window, Maya felt a sense of relief flooding through her. Finally, after 15 years, adult Maya was standing beside her, ready to fight for the truth that 8-year-old Maya had been too small and powerless to defend. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Maya, I love you, but I think you're misremembering what happened. Derek is like a son to me. Please don't do anything that would hurt our family."
Maya stared at the text for a long time, then deleted it without responding. She picked up Detective Morrison's business card and dialed the number before she could lose her nerve. "Detective Morrison, my name is Maya Chen, and I need to report a crime that happened 15 years ago. I have evidence, and I'm ready to tell the truth." Detective Sarah Morrison's office was nothing like the sterile perfection of Dr. Chen's dental practice. The walls were painted institutional beige, covered with children's drawings, thank you cards from cases she'd solved, Maya realized. The desk was cluttered with case files, coffee cups, and a small cactus that looked like it was barely surviving under the fluorescent lights. Morrison herself was younger than Maya had expected, maybe 35, with short auburn hair and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she'd heard every lie and excuse imaginable. "Maya, I've reviewed the materials you sent over, your childhood journal, the dental records, Dr. Chen's assessment. This is compelling evidence, but I want you to understand what you're getting into before we proceed." Morrison leaned forward, her hands clasped on the desk. "Historical abuse cases are complex. Memory is complicated. Families don't like to be confronted with uncomfortable truths. Are you prepared for the possibility that people you love might choose to protect Derek rather than support you?" Maya thought about her mother's text, about Aunt Linda's reluctance, about 15 years of family gatherings where she'd felt like a ghost haunting her own life. "Detective, I think they've already made that choice. I'm just finally ready to stop pretending it doesn't hurt." Morrison nodded, making a note in Maya's file. "Tell me about the family dynamic. Walk me through who knew what, when they knew it, and how they responded." Maya took a deep breath and began with the divorce. Her parents, Jennifer and Michael, had been locked in an increasingly bitter custody battle that summer. Michael had been drinking more, staying out later, picking fights about everything from Maya's bedtime to which parent she'd live with when the divorce was final. Jennifer had been working double shifts at the hospital, where she was a nurse, trying to save money for legal fees and her own apartment. Uncle Tom presented himself as the solution. He had the big house, the stay-at-home wife, the responsible older brother routine. My parents were desperate for help, and Tom loved being seen as the family hero. And Derek. Derek was 10, but he seemed older. He'd been through his own parents' divorce 2 years earlier, and it had been ugly. His mom had accused his dad, Uncle Tom, of having anger management issues, but Tom got custody anyway. Derek had learned to be charming when adults were watching and cruel when they weren't. Morrison was taking detailed notes. "Tell me about the escalation pattern you documented in your journal." Maya pulled out the purple notebook, its pages now photocopied and organized in a manila folder. "It started small. Derek would accidentally break my things, or push me just hard enough to hurt, but not hard enough to leave obvious marks. When I'd tell Aunt Linda, she'd make excuses. Boys will be boys. He's adjusting to his new life. He doesn't know his own strength."
What about Uncle Tom's response? Uncle Tom would get annoyed when I complained. He'd say things like, Maya's being dramatic again, or she's not used to rough play because she's an only child. But I started to notice that he never actually witnessed Derek's worst behavior. Derek was smart about timing. Morrison flipped through the photocopied journal pages. This entry from July 4th, Derek showed you a hammer and threatened to hurt you with it. Did you tell any adults about that specific threat? My stomach clenched at the memory. I tried to tell Aunt Linda that night at dinner. Derek was sitting right across from me, smiling like an angel, and I said he'd shown me his dad's tools and said scary things. Uncle Tom got angry, not at Derek, but at me. He said I was trying to get Derek in trouble for no reason, and that if I couldn't play nicely with my cousin, maybe I should spend the rest of the summer at home with my fighting parents.
That's a textbook silencing technique, Morrison observed. Make the victim responsible for family peace, threaten them with consequences for speaking up. What happened after that? I stopped telling adults anything. Derek had won. He knew he could do whatever he wanted to me, and the grown-ups would always take his side. Morrison set down her pen and looked directly at Maya. Maya, I need to ask you some difficult questions about that final day, the day Derek broke your tooth. Can you walk me through exactly what happened from the beginning? Maya had been dreading this moment, but also longing for it. Finally, someone who would listen to her complete, unedited version of events. It was July 25th, a Tuesday. Uncle Tom had gone to work, and Aunt Linda was inside doing laundry. Derek came to find me where I was reading in the backyard. He had Uncle Tom's aluminum baseball bat, and he said we were going to play a new game called Mercy. Had Derek mentioned this game before? He'd been promising it for days, always with this creepy smile. He said it would be the most memorable game we'd ever play. Maya paused, steadying herself. The rules were simple. I had to try to take the bat away from him, but every time I got close, he would swing it near my head, making me duck or jump back. He called it target practice. Morrison was writing quickly. How long did this go on? Maybe 10 minutes? I kept saying I didn't want to play anymore, but Derek said the game wasn't over until he said it was over. He kept swinging that bat closer and closer to my face, laughing when I'd flinch or stumble backward. Maya could see it all clearly now. The backyard with its patchy grass and chain-link fence, the smell of Linda's laundry detergent drifting from the open windows, Derek's eyes bright with malicious excitement. Finally, I got tired of being scared. I made a grab for the bat, really committed to it. And Derek? Detective. He looked me right in the eye and swung that bat directly at my face, full strength. It wasn't a game anymore, and it wasn't an accident. He wanted to hurt me, and he did. What happened immediately after the impact? I fell backward, blood everywhere, my tooth hanging by a thread. Derek stood over me for a moment, and I swear he looked satisfied. Then Aunt Linda came running outside, and Derek's whole demeanor changed. Suddenly, he was panicked, concerned, sorry. He dropped the bat and knelt beside me saying, Maya, I'm so sorry. The bat slipped when I swung it. I didn't mean to hit you. Morrison looked up from her notes. He had his story ready immediately? Immediately. And when Uncle Tom came home from work, Derek stuck to that story perfectly. He even cried when he told it, talking about how guilty he felt for accidentally hurting his cousin during innocent play. Maya, this level of calculation in a 10-year-old suggests this wasn't his first time covering up deliberate harm. Tell me about Derek's behavior patterns over the years since then.
When he was angry, always her things, never his own. She said he had a way of making her feel like she was crazy for being upset about it. Morrison made another note. That's a classic pattern of psychological abuse. Maya, I want to bring in my partner, Detective Rivera, who specializes in family systems and long-term abuse patterns. Would you be willing to tell your story again to him? Maya nodded, though the thought of repeating it all was exhausting. Detective Rivera turned out to be a soft-spoken man in his 40s who had the manner of someone who'd heard terrible things and learned how to hold space for them. He listened to Maya's account without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification about dates or specific incidents. "Maya," Rivera said when she finished, "what you're describing is a pattern called family scapegoating. Derek was protected by the family system while you were positioned as the problem child, the one who caused drama and created conflict. This is incredibly common in families where one child has behavioral issues that the parents aren't equipped to address. Why would my own family choose to protect him instead of me?" Maya asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. "Because protecting Derek was easier than acknowledging that he was dangerous." Morrison and Rivera exchanged a look that made Maya's blood run cold. "Maya, we haven't contacted Derek yet, but we have been in touch with other family members as part of our preliminary investigation. It's possible word has gotten back to him." Morrison's voice was carefully controlled. "Have you noticed anything unusual lately? Phone calls, messages, anyone following you or showing up unexpectedly?" Maya thought about the strange car she'd seen parked across from her apartment building twice this week, about the hang-up calls she'd been getting at odd hours. She'd dismissed them as coincidences, but now... "There have been some things," Maya admitted, "but I thought I was being paranoid." "In cases like this, paranoia is often just good instincts," Rivera said. "Maya, I want you to start documenting everything. Unusual phone calls, cars you don't recognize, any family members who contact you with messages that feel like pressure or threats. We're going to move forward with this investigation, but Derek's family is likely to mount a defense that involves discrediting you." As if summoned by Rivera's words, Maya's phone rang. Uncle Tom's name appeared on the screen, and all three of them stared at it. "Answer it," Morrison said quietly. "We'll listen. Don't tell him you're here with us." Maya's hands were shaking as she accepted the call. "Hello, Uncle Tom?" "Maya!" His voice was tight with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't play stupid with me, girl. I got a call from some detective asking questions about Derek, about things that happened when you were kids. Are you trying to destroy this family?" Maya looked at Morrison, who nodded encouragingly. "Uncle Tom, I'm just telling the truth about what happened to me." "The truth? The truth is that you were a troubled little girl from a broken home, and my family tried to help you. The truth is that Derek was a child too, and accidents happen. The truth is that you've spent 15 years stewing in resentment, and now you want to destroy an innocent man's life." Maya felt 8 years old again, small and powerless under Uncle Tom's rage. But this time, she had witnesses. This time, she had allies. "Uncle Tom, Derek wasn't innocent. He threatened me all summer, and then he deliberately hit me with a baseball bat. Aunt Linda saw it happen. She knows what really occurred." "Linda doesn't know anything," Tom snapped. "Linda gets confused, sees things that aren't there. Always has. And you, Maya, you've always been a liar. Even your own parents couldn't handle your drama. That's why they dumped you with us for the summer." Morrison was writing rapidly, documenting Tom's attempt to discredit both Maya and Linda. "Derek is getting married next month," Tom continued. "He has a good job, a future. And you want to destroy all of that with some fantasy you've cooked up because you can't stand to see him happy? Uncle Tom, this isn't about Derek's happiness. This is about what he did to me." "What he did?" Tom's laugh was ugly. "What he did was be a normal little boy playing with his cousin. What you did was be a dramatic, attention-seeking brat who couldn't handle normal roughhousing. And now you're trying to turn childhood games into some kind of crime." Maya felt tears starting, but they were tears of anger now, not fear. "Uncle Tom, there is no scenario where hitting an 8-year-old in the face with a baseball bat is normal. You watch your tone with me, Maya. I'm the one who fed you and housed you when your own parents couldn't be bothered. I'm the one who took you to the emergency room when you got hurt. I'm the one who's protected you from the consequences of your lies all these years." Protected me? You silenced me. You made sure no one would ever believe my version of what happened. Because your version was wrong, Tom was shouting now. Derek is a good boy. He's always been a good boy. He would never deliberately hurt anyone, especially not family. Rivera was making notes about Tom's emotional escalation, his need to preserve Derek's image at all costs. Uncle Tom, Maya said quietly, if Derek is such a good person, why are you so afraid of an investigation? If he's innocent, the truth will prove that. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that Maya wondered if Tom had hung up. Maya, Tom's voice was low and threatening now, you better think real hard about what you're doing. This family has been good to you. We've kept your secrets, covered for your problems, made excuses for your behavior. But if you persist with this attack on Derek, you'll find out what it's like to have no family at all. Is that a threat, Uncle Tom? It's a promise. You keep pushing this lie, and you'll be dead to all of us. Derek, Linda, your cousins, your aunt and uncle on your mother's side will all know what kind of person you really are. Will all know that you're the kind of woman who destroys innocent men with false accusations. Morrison was gesturing for Maya to keep him talking. Uncle Tom, what if I'm telling the truth? What if Derek really did hurt me and you've been protecting an abuser for 15 years? You're not telling the truth, Tom exploded. You're a vindictive little bitch who can't stand to see Derek successful and happy. You've always been jealous of him, always tried to cause problems for him. Even as a kid, you were jealous that he got attention, that people liked him better than you. Maya felt something break inside her chest, not like damage, but like a dam bursting. All the years of self-doubt, all the times she'd wondered if maybe she really was remembering wrong, all the guilt she'd carried for harboring negative feelings about Derek, it all washed away in the face of Tom's vicious defensiveness. Uncle Tom, Maya said calmly, thank you for showing me exactly who you really are. I'll be sure to share this conversation with the detectives. She hung up before he could respond.
Morrison was grinning. Maya, that was perfect. He just gave us a textbook example of witness intimidation and threat-making. Everything he said is going to help our case. Rivera nodded. Tom's reaction tells us everything we need to know about the family dynamic. He's not responding like someone who believes Derek is innocent. He's responding like someone who knows Derek is guilty and is desperate to keep that information buried. Maya felt emotionally drained, but also oddly exhilarated. For the first time in 15 years, she'd stood up to Uncle Tom's bullying. For the first time, she'd had witnesses to his manipulative tactics. What happens next? Maya asked. Next, we interview Aunt Linda, Morrison said. If she's willing to cooperate, her testimony, combined with the Polaroid, could be crucial evidence. We'll also want to speak with Derek's ex-girlfriend, Emily, and we'll interview Derek himself. Will he be arrested? That depends on what evidence we can gather and what the prosecutor decides. Maya, I want you to understand that this process could take months, and it's going to be emotionally difficult. Your family is likely to escalate their pressure tactics, and Derek himself might try to contact you. Rivera leaned forward. Maya, we believe you. We believe this happened the way you say it did. But belief isn't the same as proof in a legal sense. We need to build a case that can withstand Derek's defense attorney, his family's attempts to discredit you, and the natural tendency of juries to be skeptical of historical abuse claims. Maya nodded, understanding the magnitude of what she was undertaking. Detective Morrison, can I ask you something? In your experience, when families react the way mine is reacting, what does that usually mean? Morrison considered the question carefully. In my experience, Maya, innocent people don't need their families to threaten and intimidate their accusers. Innocent people welcome investigations because they know the truth will vindicate them. When families circle the wagons this quickly and aggressively, it usually means they've been protecting a secret for a long time. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Maya, Tom called me. He's very upset. Please call me so we can talk about this rationally. She showed the text to Morrison, who photographed it with her phone. Maya, from now on, save every communication from your family members. Don't delete anything, even if it seems harmless. We're going to need to document the pattern of pressure they're putting on you. Preparing and narrating the story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. As Maya left the police station, she felt like she was walking into a war zone. Her phone had been buzzing constantly with calls and texts from various family members, all variations on the same theme. Stop this investigation. Think about Derek's future. Consider what this will do to the family. But Maya was thinking about Emily, Derek's ex-girlfriend who had been brave enough to file a restraining order and then pressured into dropping it. She was thinking about Derek's future wife and the children they might have someday. She was thinking about 8-year-old Maya, who had tried so hard to document the truth and had been systematically silenced. For the first time in 15 years, she felt like she was fighting for something bigger than her own pain. She was fighting for the principle that children deserve to be believed, that victims deserve justice, that family loyalty shouldn't trump basic human decency. Her phone rang again, Derek's number this time. Maya stared at it, her heart racing, before letting it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, the voicemail notification appeared. She played it on speaker, her hands shaking. Derek's voice was smooth, concerned, exactly as she remembered it. Maya, hey, it's Derek. I heard you've been talking to some police officers about our childhood, and I'm really concerned about you. I think maybe you've been under a lot of stress lately, and maybe your memories are getting confused. You know how much I care about you, right? Your family. Why don't we meet for coffee and talk about this? I'm sure we can clear up any misunderstandings.
Maya saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Detective Morrison. Even after 15 years, Derek was still trying to gaslight her, still trying to make her doubt her own experience. But this time, Maya knew exactly what he was doing, and she had people who believed her. She drove home through the darkening streets, thinking about the long road ahead. The legal process would be difficult, and her family's betrayal would be painful. But for the first time since she was 8 years old, Maya felt like she was moving toward truth instead of away from it. In her rearview mirror, she noticed a dark sedan that seemed to be following her route a little too precisely. Maya made a few random turns, and the car stayed with her. Her pulse quickened, but instead of the old, familiar fear, she felt a grim satisfaction. Let Derek and his family try to intimidate her. This time, she had allies. This time, she had evidence. This time, she was ready for war. Maya pulled into her apartment complex and watched the sedan drive slowly past, its driver's face obscured by the evening shadows. She took a photo of the license plate and texted it to Morrison with a message. "I think Derek's having me followed." The response came back immediately. "We're escalating this case. Derek just made it clear he sees you as a threat worth monitoring. Maya, you're not alone in this anymore. We've got your back." As Maya climbed the stairs to her apartment, she felt 8-year-old Maya walking beside her, no longer silent, no longer afraid. Tomorrow, they would call Aunt Linda together. Tomorrow, they would continue fighting for the truth that had been buried too long under family secrets and the protection of predators. The metallic taste of fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, something that tasted like justice, sharp and bright and dangerous as the truth itself. Aunt Linda's house looked exactly the same as it had 15 years ago. White siding, red shutters, flower boxes that Linda tended with obsessive care. Maya sat in her car for a moment, watching her aunt through the kitchen window. Linda was washing dishes, her movements slow and methodical, and Maya could see the weight of secrets in the slope of her shoulders. Detective Morrison sat in the passenger seat, her presence both comforting and nerve-wracking. "Remember, Maya, we're here to gather information, not to pressure her. If Linda feels cornered, she might shut down completely."
Maya nodded, though her hands were shaking. The past 3 days had been a whirlwind of police interviews, evidence gathering, and increasingly desperate calls from family members. Derek had left 6 more voicemails, each one more manipulative than the last. Uncle Tom had shown up at Maya's workplace, demanding she speak with him privately. Her mother had enlisted Maya's grandmother to call and remind her about family loyalty. But Aunt Linda hadn't called at all, which somehow felt more ominous than Uncle Tom's threats. Maya knocked on the front door, the same door she'd run through as a child, seeking safety that never quite materialized. Linda opened it wearing a floral apron over jeans, her graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked older than Maya remembered, more fragile. "Maya, sweetheart." Linda's smile was strained. "And you must be Detective Morrison. Please, come in." The house smelled like cinnamon and anxiety. Linda led them to the living room where photo albums were scattered across the coffee table. Family pictures spanning decades, including several of Maya and Derek's children. Maya saw herself at 8, grinning gap-toothed at the camera. Derek beside her with his arm around her shoulders in a gesture that looked protective, but felt possessive in retrospect.
"I've been going through old pictures since you called," Linda said, settling into her recliner, "trying to remember things the way they really happened, not the way we all agreed they happened." Morrison pulled out her notebook. "Mrs. Coleman, I want you to know that anything you tell us today is confidential unless you choose to make it public. We're not here to pressure you into saying anything specific. We just want to hear your memories of that summer, particularly the day Maya was injured." Linda's hands twisted in her lap. "Detective, before I say anything else, I need you to understand something about my husband. Tom isn't a bad man, but he has very strong ideas about family, about loyalty, about protecting the people he loves. When Derek came to live with us after the divorce, Tom was determined to prove he could raise his son right." Maya felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach. Even now, Linda was making excuses for the men in her family. "Tell me about Derek's behavior that summer," Morrison said gently. Linda closed her eyes, and when she opened them, they were filled with tears. Derek was angry, so angry. He'd been through a terrible custody battle, heard his parents say horrible things about each other. His mother had made allegations about Tom's temper, about his methods of discipline. Tom was devastated by those accusations, determined to prove them wrong. "What kind of allegations?" Morrison asked. "Physical discipline that crossed the line into abuse. Derek's mother claimed that Tom had hit Derek with a belt, that he'd twisted Derek's arm hard enough to leave bruises, that he'd thrown Derek against a wall during a tantrum." Linda's voice was barely audible. I think maybe she was. I think Derek learned his anger from his father, and then that summer, he practiced it on you." Morrison leaned forward. "Mrs. Coleman, walk me through the day Maya was injured. Start from the beginning." Linda took a shaky breath. That morning, Tom left for work early. Derek had been talking for days about this special game he wanted to play with Maya, something he called Mercy. He was excited about it in a way that made me uncomfortable, but I didn't know why. Did Derek explain what this game involved? He said it was like tag, but more fun. He kept saying Maya would remember it forever. Linda's voice cracked. "I should have paid more attention. I should have asked more questions." "What were you doing when the incident occurred?" "Laundry. I was in the basement folding clothes. I heard shouting from the backyard, but Derek and Maya were always loud when they played. Then I heard Maya screaming, not playing screaming, but terror screaming. I ran upstairs and outside, and—" Linda stopped, pressing her hands to her face. "Take your time," Morrison said softly. Maya was on the ground, blood everywhere. Her face was swelling already, and she was crying so hard she could barely breathe. And Derek was standing over her with Tom's aluminum baseball bat, and the expression on his face? Linda shuddered. "Detective, he looked satisfied. He looked like he had accomplished something he'd been planning for a long time." Maya felt vindicated and sick at the same time. After 15 years, someone was finally confirming what she'd always known. "What happened next?"
Morrison asked.
Derek saw me coming and his whole demeanor changed. He dropped the bat and knelt beside Maya, started saying, oh no, I'm so sorry, the bat slipped when I swung it. But detective, the thing is, when I first saw him standing over her, he wasn't moving like someone who just had an accident. He was standing still, calm, observing the damage he'd done. Morrison was writing rapidly. Did you question Derek's version of events? I started to. I asked Maya what happened, but she was in shock, couldn't speak clearly. Derek kept repeating his story about the bat slipping, and when Tom came home, Derek told it so convincingly that even I started to doubt what I'd seen. Mrs. Coleman, you mentioned taking a photograph. Can you tell me about that? Linda stood up slowly and walked to an old desk in the corner of the room. She pulled out a manila envelope and returned to her chair, holding it like it might explode. I took this picture thinking it might be important for insurance or medical records, but when I developed it and saw Maya's face, Linda's hands were shaking as she opened the envelope. Detective, this isn't the face of a child who's been accidentally hurt. This is the face of a child who's been terrorized. She handed the Polaroid to Morrison, who studied it carefully before passing it to Maya. Maya looked at her 8-year-old self and felt her heart break. The girl in the photo was swollen and bloody, yes, but more than that, she looked haunted. Her eyes held a depth of fear that spoke to systematic intimidation, not a one-time accident. Linda, Maya said quietly, why didn't you ever say anything? Why didn't you protect me? Linda's tears were flowing freely now. Because I was a coward, because I was financially dependent on Tom, because I'd seen what happened to Derek's mother when she tried to speak out against him, because I told myself that maybe I had misunderstood what I saw, maybe it really was an accident. Morrison looked up from her notes. Mrs. Coleman, were there other incidents that summer? Other times when Derek hurt Maya or behaved inappropriately? Small things. Derek would pinch Maya under the dinner table hard enough to make her yelp, then act confused when the adults asked what was wrong. He would break her toys and blame it on accidents. He would corner her in the basement and say things that made her cry, but when I'd ask what happened, he'd say they were just playing. Did Maya ever try to tell you about Derek's behavior? She tried. Oh God, she tried so many times, but Tom would get angry whenever Maya complained about Derek. He'd say she was trying to cause trouble, that she wasn't used to playing with boys, that she was being dramatic. And after a while, Maya stopped trying to tell us anything. Maya felt 8 years old again, remembering the crushing isolation of being disbelieved by every adult who was supposed to protect her. Mrs. Coleman, Morrison said, I need to ask you about Derek's behavior patterns over the years since then. Have you observed anything that concerns you? Linda was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Derek has always been charming, successful, well-liked, but his girlfriends, they never seem to last very long, and the ones who do stick around for a while, they change. They become quieter, more nervous, like they're walking on eggshells. Have any of them ever confided in you? Sarah, his girlfriend before Emily, she came to me once after Derek had broken her phone during an argument. She said it was an accident, but she was asking me if Derek might have learned violent behaviors at home. I told her no, that Derek was a good boy from a good family. I lied to protect Derek, and I might have put her in danger by doing it. Morrison made another note. What about Emily? Did you have any interactions with her?
Emily was terrified of Derek by the end of their relationship. She came to Sunday dinner with bruises on her arms, said she'd fallen down her apartment stairs. But Maya, she looked exactly like you did that day in the backyard. Not hurt by accident, but hurt by someone who enjoyed hurting her. Maya felt a chill run through her. Aunt Linda, do you think Derek would hurt his fiancée, the woman he's supposed to marry next month? Linda's answer was barely audible. I think Derek hurts people because he likes to hurt people. I think he's learned to choose victims who are vulnerable, who won't be believed if they speak out.
And I think we've all been enabling him for 15 years by pretending that what happened to you was acceptable. Morrison closed her notebook. Mrs. Coleman, would you be willing to provide an official statement to the police? Would you be willing to testify about what you witnessed? Linda looked around her living room, at the family photos, at the life she'd built with Tom, at the comfortable denial that had sustained her for 15 years. If I tell the truth about Derek, Tom will never forgive me. He'll see it as a betrayal of our family, of our marriage, of everything we've built together. And if you don't tell the truth, Maya asked quietly, how many more people will Derek hurt while you protect his secret? Linda closed her eyes, and when she opened them, something had shifted. Detective Morrison, yes, I'll give you an official statement. I'll testify if necessary. I should have protected Maya 15 years ago, but I was too afraid. I won't make that mistake again. Morrison stood up. Mrs. Coleman, I want you to understand that this decision may have consequences for your family relationships. Are you prepared for that? Linda looked at Maya, at the woman who had grown from the terrorized 8-year-old in the photograph. Detective, I've spent 15 years living with the consequences of staying silent. I think it's time to live with the consequences of telling the truth. As they prepared to leave, Linda pulled Maya aside. Maya, there's something else. After Derek hit you that day, when you were at the hospital getting your tooth fixed, I heard Derek talking to his friend on the phone. He was bragging about how he'd finally gotten you to shut up, how you'd never bother him again because now you knew what would happen if you did. Maya felt the last piece of the puzzle click into place. Derek hadn't just hurt her in a moment of anger, he'd planned it, executed it, and celebrated the results. He used violence to silence her. And then the adults in her family completed the job by making her doubt her own experience. Maya, Linda continued, I want you to know that you were a good child. You deserved protection and you deserved to be believed. I failed you then, but I won't fail you now. As Maya and Detective Morrison drove away from Linda's house, Maya felt emotionally drained but also lighter somehow. Finally, after 15 years, an adult who had been there was acknowledging the truth of her experience. How do you feel? Morrison asked. Scared, I admitted, but also vindicated. For so long, I wondered if maybe I really was remembering wrong, if maybe Derek really hadn't meant to hurt me. But hearing Linda describe what she saw, Detective, I'm not crazy. This really happened the way I remember it. Morrison nodded. Maya, Linda's testimony is going to be crucial to building a case against Derek. Combined with your childhood journal, the dental records, and the photograph, we're starting to build a compelling picture of deliberate abuse followed by systematic cover-up. Maya's phone rang, Uncle Tom's number. Morrison gestured for her to answer it. You vindicative little bitch. Tom's voice was raw with rage. Linda told me about your conversation. How dare you manipulate a confused old woman into supporting your lies?
Uncle Tom, Aunt Linda isn't confused. She's finally telling the truth about what she witnessed. The truth? The truth is that you've destroyed my family. Derek is devastated. His fiancée is questioning their engagement. His job is in jeopardy because people are starting to ask questions. You've ruined an innocent man's life with your delusions. Maya felt a familiar flutter of doubt. Uncle Tom's anger was so intense, so convincing. But then she looked at the Polaroid that Linda had given her, at her own 8-year-old face frozen in terror, and the doubt evaporated. Uncle Tom, if Derek is innocent, why are you so afraid of an investigation? Why not let the truth come out? Because people like you don't care about truth. You care about revenge, about destroying good people because you can't stand to see them happy and successful. Uncle Tom, I'm not trying to destroy Derek. I'm trying to get justice for what he did to me. What he did? Tom's voice rose to a roar. What he did was be a normal little boy playing with his cousin. What you're doing is trying to criminalize childhood games because you're a bitter, twisted woman who can't move on from minor childhood disappointments.
Morrison was documenting everything, noting Tom's escalating aggression and his continued refusal to engage with the actual evidence. "Uncle Tom," Maya said calmly, "Aunt Linda saw Derek standing over me after he hit me with that bat. She saw the look on his face. She knows it wasn't an accident." Linda is a disturbed woman who sees things that aren't there. She's always been unstable, always looking for drama and conflict. You've manipulated her into supporting your fantasy, and now you're both destroying an innocent man. Maya hung up before Tom could continue his verbal assault. Morrison was shaking her head in disgust. "Maya, what you just witnessed is called DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. Tom is denying Derek's culpability, attacking your credibility, and positioning Derek as the victim of your false accusations. It's a classic technique used by families who protect abusers." Maya felt emotionally battered, but also strangely empowered. "Detective Morrison, I'm ready to see this through to the end. Derek has been protected by family silence for 15 years, and it has to stop." As they drove through the darkening streets, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Maya, I know you're hurting and confused, but please don't let the police manipulate you into believing things that aren't true. I love you like a sister. Let me help you work through these painful memories before you do something you'll regret forever." Maya showed the text to Morrison, who photographed it immediately. "He's still trying to gaslight you, still trying to convince you that your memories are false, that outside influences are manipulating you. Maya, this text is actually helpful evidence. It shows Derek's continued pattern of psychological manipulation." Maya stared at Derek's message, seeing clearly for the first time how calculated his language was. Every word was chosen to undermine her confidence, to make her doubt her own experience, to position him as the loving family member trying to save her from her own delusions. But Maya wasn't 8 years old anymore. She wasn't isolated and powerless. She had evidence, allies, and most importantly, she had the unshakable knowledge that her memories were true. "Detective Morrison, when do we interview Derek?" "Tomorrow morning." "Maya, I want you to understand that Derek is going to try every manipulation tactic he's ever used on you. He's going to be charming, concerned, hurt that you would believe such terrible things about him. Are you ready for that?" Maya thought about 8-year-old Maya, writing in her purple notebook, documenting abuse that no one would believe. She thought about 15 years of carrying shame and confusion and
self-doubt. She thought about Derek's ex-girlfriends, about his future fiancé, about all the potential victims who could be protected if Derek finally faced consequences for his actions. "I'm ready," Maya said, and for the first time in 15 years, she meant it completely. The police station interview room was stark and windowless, furnished with a metal table and 4 plastic chairs that had seen better decades. Maya sat beside Detective Morrison, watching Derek through the one-way mirror as he waited with his attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Hartwell who specialized in defending men accused of domestic violence. Derek looked older than Maya remembered, his boyish features hardened into a more angular masculinity. But his eyes were the same, calculating, always searching for advantages, for weaknesses to exploit. He was dressed carefully in khakis and a button-down shirt, every inch the respectable citizen wrongly accused. "Remember, Maya," Morrison said quietly, "Derek is a master manipulator. He's going to try to make you feel guilty, crazy, vindictive. He'll use your shared history, your family connections, anything he can think of to destabilize you." Maya nodded, though her hands were shaking. She'd spent the last week preparing for this moment, reviewing her memories with a trauma counselor, practicing how to stay grounded when Derek inevitably tried to gaslight her. Detective Rivera entered the interview room and sat across from Derek and his attorney. Morrison activated the recording equipment from the observation room.
Derek Coleman, you're here today to answer questions about an incident that occurred in July of 1998, when you were 10 years old and your cousin Maya Chen was 8. You are not under arrest at this time, but you have the right to remain silent and the right to have an attorney present, which you've exercised. Derek leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest and concerned. Detective Rivera, I want to cooperate fully with your investigation. I'm deeply troubled by these allegations, and I want to help Maya get the support she clearly needs for whatever psychological issues she's experiencing. Maya's stomach clenched. Even in the first 30 seconds, Derek was positioning her as mentally unstable. Tell me about the day Maya was injured, Rivera said. Derek's face arranged itself into an expression of genuine regret. It was a terrible accident that I felt guilty about for 15 years. Maya and I were playing baseball in the backyard. I was practicing my swing, and Maya came up behind me just as I was swinging the bat. I didn't see her, and the bat connected with her face. I was devastated. That's not what your mother told us, Rivera said calmly. Derek's composure slipped for just a moment before he recovered. My mother has been struggling with depression and anxiety for years. She sees conspiracies and dramas that don't exist. She's also been influenced by Maya's recent campaign to rewrite history. Patricia Hartwell placed a warning hand on Derek's arm, but Derek continued. Detective, I need you to understand something about Maya. She's always been jealous of me, always tried to cause problems for me with our family. Even as children, she would make up stories, exaggerate minor incidents, try to get me in trouble. This is just the adult version of that same pattern. Maya watched Derek's performance with a mixture of rage and amazement. He was so smooth, so convincing. If she hadn't lived through what really happened, she might almost believe him herself. Rivera pulled out Maya's childhood journal. Derek, I want to show you some entries that Maya wrote during the summer of 1998. These document a pattern of threats and intimidation leading up to the day she was injured.
Derek barely glanced at the journal pages. Detective, Maya was a very imaginative child with a tendency toward drama. She watched a lot of television, read books about mysteries and crimes. I'm not surprised that she would write creative stories about our normal childhood interactions. She documented specific threats you made, including showing her a hammer and threatening to hurt her with it. Derek's laugh was perfectly calibrated, surprised, hurt, a little amused. Detective, I was 10 years old. If I showed Maya a tool, it was probably because I was excited about helping my dad with projects around the house. Children that age don't make sophisticated threats. They play games, they have fun, they sometimes get overexcited. Maya has taken innocent childhood interactions and twisted them into some kind of sinister narrative. Rivera leaned forward. Derek, your ex-girlfriend Emily filed a restraining order against you 3 years ago, alleging that you threatened her with a crowbar. She later dropped the charges. Can you explain that incident? For the first time, Derek's composure cracked visibly. His attorney whispered something in his ear, but Derek shook his head. Emily was going through a difficult time in her life. Depression, anxiety, substance abuse issues. She was paranoid, seeing threats that didn't exist. During an argument, I was moving some tools in my garage, and Emily interpreted my normal actions as threatening. I was heartbroken that she felt unsafe, but her perception didn't match reality. Maya felt sick listening to Derek's explanations. Every victim was mentally unstable, paranoid, jealous, dramatic. Every incident was a misunderstanding, an overreaction, a product of the victim's psychological problems. Rivera pulled out the Polaroid that Aunt Linda had provided. Derek, this photograph was taken immediately after Maya was injured. Does this look like the result of an accidental bat slip to you? Derek studied the photo, and for just a moment, Maya saw something flicker across his face. Not remorse, but satisfaction. He remembered how she looked that day, and part of him was pleased with his handiwork. Detective,
I see a child who was badly hurt in an accident, and I see why that accident has traumatized her so deeply to answer. If the adults in your family admitted but Derek had deliberately hurt you, they would have had to confront some very uncomfortable questions. Was Derek a danger to other children? Were they failing as parents and guardians? Had they created an environment where abuse could flourish? Rivera nodded. It's much easier to reframe the victim as oversensitive or attention-seeking than to deal with the reality of having a predator in the family. Maya felt a chill run through her. A predator? Is that what Derek is? Maya, I've been doing this work for 20 years, Rivera said gently. Children who deliberately harm other children, who show no remorse, who are skilled at manipulation and victim blaming, they don't usually grow out of these behaviors. They get better at hiding them. Morrison pulled out another file. Maya, we've done some preliminary research on Derek's background. Since you filed this complaint, we've looked into his employment history, his relationships, any documented incidents. Maya's stomach dropped. You found something. 3 years ago, Derek's then-girlfriend Emily filed a restraining order against him. She alleged that he had threatened her with a crowbar during an argument, but dropped the charges 2 weeks later. The police report notes that Emily appeared to be under significant pressure from Derek's family to recant her statement. Maya felt sick. That could have been me. If I'd stayed silent, if I'd never spoken up, Derek might have killed someone by now.
Maya stared at the police report in Detective Morrison's hands, feeling the weight of all the women Derek had hurt settling on her shoulders. What happened to Emily after she dropped the charges? She moved across the country, Rivera said quietly, changed her name, started over completely. We managed to track her down, and she agreed to speak with us. Maya, her story is remarkably similar to yours. Systematic intimidation, deliberate harm disguised as accidents, and a family that protected Derek at her expense. Morrison opened another file. We also interviewed Derek's current fiancée, Jessica. She initially denied any problems, but when we showed her Emily's statement and your evidence, she broke down. Derek has been training her, as she put it, teaching her that her perceptions are unreliable, that her emotional reactions are excessive, that she's lucky he puts up with her instability. Maya felt tears streaming down her face, not for herself this time, but for all the women who had suffered because her family had chosen to protect a predator rather than acknowledge the truth. There's more, Rivera continued. Derek works construction, and he's had 3 separate incidents with female coworkers reporting inappropriate behavior. Nothing that resulted in formal charges, but a pattern of targeting women who were new to the job, vulnerable, unlikely to be believed if they complained. Maya understood now why Derek had been so desperate to silence her investigation. It wasn't just about one childhood incident, it was about protecting a lifetime of predatory behavior. What happens now? Maya asked. Now we arrest Derek. We have enough evidence to charge him with assault for the original incident, plus witness intimidation for his attempts to silence you. Emily has agreed to testify about the restraining order incident, and Jessica is considering pressing charges for domestic abuse. Maya felt a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion. After 15 years, Derek would finally face consequences for his actions.
She's pressing charges for domestic battery. Derek apparently tried to intimidate her into silence the same way he tried with you, by showing up at her workplace, calling her family members, threatening to destroy her reputation. But Jessica had an advantage you didn't. She knew she wasn't the first victim. Maya nodded, understanding that her decision to speak up had created a domino effect. By breaking the family's code of silence, she'd made it possible for other victims to come forward. Maya stood in front of a group of social workers and victim advocates, sharing her story as part of a training program on family systems that enable abuse. It was her 5th speaking engagement this month, and each time she watched faces in the audience light up with recognition. The most insidious part of family-enabled abuse, Maya told the group, is how it trains victims to doubt their own experiences. When the people who are supposed to protect you consistently choose to protect your abuser instead, you learn that your truth is less important than family peace. After her presentation, a young woman approached her, maybe 20 years old, with the same haunted look Maya remembered from her own mirror. "My uncle did something similar to me when I was 7. My family says I'm remembering wrong, that I'm being dramatic, but listening to your story, I know what happened to me was real." Maya hugged the young woman, feeling the strange privilege of being able to offer validation that she'd never received herself. "Your memories are real, your experience matters, and you deserve to be believed." Maya received a letter forwarded through her victim's advocate. The return address showed Derek's prison, and for a moment, Maya considered throwing it away unopened. But curiosity won. "Maya, I've been working with a therapist here, and she says I need to take responsibility for my actions. I want you to know that I remember that day differently than you do, but I accept that I hurt you and that my family covered it up instead of getting me help. I used to think you were just being dramatic about childhood games, but now I understand that what felt like normal behavior to me was actually learned violence. My father taught me that hurting people was acceptable if you could justify it afterward. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just acknowledging that you were telling the truth, and I'm sorry it took me this long to admit it. Derek." Maya read the letter 3 times, feeling strangely empty. This was the acknowledgement she'd waited 15 years to receive, but it felt anticlimactic now. The real victory hadn't been getting Derek to admit his guilt. It had been learning to trust her own memories, to value her own truth over family loyalty. She folded the letter carefully and put it in her desk drawer, not as a keepsake, but as evidence of how long it can take for truth to surface when it's buried under layers of family denial. Maya stood in Dr. Chen's dental office, looking at new x-rays that showed a perfectly healthy mouth. She'd decided to have her old composite filling replaced with a crown, not because it was medically necessary, but because she was ready to stop carrying Derek's damage in her body. "The new crown will be indistinguishable from your natural teeth. No one will ever know you were injured," Dr. Chen explained.
Maya smiled, understanding that the real healing had nothing to do with hiding scars. "Actually, Dr. Chen, I think I'd like to keep this small reminder. Maybe a slightly different shade, something only I would notice." Dr. Chen looked puzzled. "Are you sure? We can make it completely seamless." "I'm sure," Maya said. "I want to remember what I survived. I want to remember that I was brave enough to tell the truth, even when no one wanted to hear it." As Maya left the dental office, she thought about 8-year-old Maya, writing desperately in her purple notebook, trying to document evidence that someone would believe. That little girl had been failed by every adult who was supposed to protect her, but she'd never stopped fighting for the truth. Maya pulled out her phone and called the crisis hotline where she now volunteered. "Hi, it's Maya. I know I'm not scheduled for tonight, but I'm feeling inspired. Can you use an extra counselor?" The truth had taken 15 years to surface, but once it had, it became a force that couldn't be contained. Derek was in prison. Jessica had rebuilt her life with the support of other survivors. Emily had found the courage to speak publicly about family systems that protect abusers. And Maya had discovered that her greatest trauma could become her greatest source of purpose. The metallic taste of fear was gone now, replaced by something sweeter, the taste of justice, sharp and bright and true as the story she'd finally been brave enough to tell. Maya walked through the evening streets, no longer afraid of shadows, no longer carrying shame that belonged to someone else. She was 25 years old, and for the first time in her life, she was completely free. Behind her, if she'd looked,
She might have seen the ghost of 8-year-old Maya, no longer crying, no longer afraid, finally ready to rest. The truth had set them both free.